Welcome to episode 7 of the Imperial Tides podcast. I'm your host, Holden, and I'm here with my co host, Simone. How are you doing today, Simone?
Good. Still breathing.
It's good. It's good. Uh, so, we just got finished watching the 2004 adaptation of The Merchant of Venice, which is one of Shakespeare's most famous romantic comedies, or just comedies. And just right off the bat, Simone, what would you rate this movie out of 10 before we even talk about it? Like, what were your initial impressions?
I give it a 7 out of 10 or 7.5.
7.5 for the
Uh,
movie?
yes.
And what would you give the play out of 10?
The play itself, I give it a 9 or 9.5,
A
I
9 or a
guess.
9.5? And would you recommend people to watch the movie version, the 2004 adaptation?
Uh, I recommend them to watch it, but maybe they should consider checking the text or the play itself.
Can you speak up a little bit? Sorry, I just can't really hear you from my end.
Um, I recommend it. I will recommend this to people, especially for some students that are studying, but maybe they should consider checking the play script itself, I guess.
Okay. And what did you think of the film's technical aspects? That would include the casting choices, the acting, the set design, the locations, the costumes, et cetera, et cetera, the camera work. What would you think of all of that?
They really did a good job to make us feel that we're in the same era as the play take place, and I guess that uh, it really did a great job to portray what is it all about or what would happen and give us a whole summary of what is it all about.
Okay, and before we go any further, I just sorry, you're really I don't know, it might just be me, but you're like really quiet on my end. Would you mind just can you speak up real quick? Let me just make sure that everything's okay with my setup right here. Just say something
Okay,
real quick.
okay, I'll speak up a bit louder.
Yeah, just try to speak up. I don't know. I don't know what it might be, but yeah, just in case, so our listeners can hear. But so you give it a 7.5 out of 10. What are your reasons for doing that?
It's just it seems that they portray a different story. They they focus on the different aspects. Um, not just what I just read on the Wikipedia article. It's just different. They focus on different aspects of the play. I guess
Really,
that's what I felt.
you think so? What was the difference? Do you think?
Maybe it was supposed to be a comedy. I guess that it's a comedy, so I'm looking forward for something that will make me smile or get engaged into something more optimistic. I guess I don't know. It's just my first time to watch some comedy, so maybe I'm expecting too much.
So you were looking for a difference in tone. You thought the film's tone was a little too dark for you for a comedy. You think?
Exactly.
Ah, I
That's what
see.
I read.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too, but the thing about it's complicated, especially when you consider the times. It's like Shakespeare. When you say comedy, what the word comedy might have meant to Shakespeare might have meant something completely different to us now. So that's kind of how I approach it. I approach it more in the archaic sense of comedy. And not every adaptation has to capture the same the tone of the original work or whatever. In fact, going off that, I would give this movie a 9 out of 10. And the only reason I wouldn't give it a 10 out of 10, the only reason I wouldn't go higher is because I'm hoping that we eventually find, as we go through more of these Shakespeare adaptations and everything, that we find something better. It's just me being optimistic there. The play itself, I would give a 10 out of 10. I think it's fun, accessible, and actually, it's simultaneously timeless, but also faithful, like really faithful to the period in which it is set. it paints a great portrait of the time and place of 1600s Venice. It's very immersive. It's very interesting, but at the same time, it's also not afraid to explore the nastier, more unpleasant side of that setting as well. And that's what I liked about the movie was that it was very. It felt like a very grounded tone. It was immersive. It brought me into that world. And it wasn't again. It wasn't afraid to not romanticize everything, to not be overly sentimental or idealistic with how it showcased these, it showed off these characters. I liked that there was more nuance to it. It felt very three dimensional to me, whereas it could, it could have very easily just been a typical run of the mill, romantic comedy, like, oh, look at all these hijinks and stuff, look at all this, whatever, just fun, fun, fun. You come in, you come out, you're entertained, but you don't really have anything to take away. I feel like the tone of this, it was much more balanced, and in through that balance, it was able to raise some interesting questions that I think we're going to get into in a little bit. But it made me think more. It was much more thought provoking that way, I think, that tone that was important. It really it was very human. It was very humane. That's what I enjoyed about it. I didn't think it was. There were times where it was a bit of a downer, but I mean, isn't life? And personally, I thought that it was more. It was like three-fourths. Lighthearted and normal and everything. It was fine. Like I don't know, it didn't really bother me that much, but I could understand why it would bother you, especially if you're coming into it thinking that it's going to be a comedy where every 5 minutes or so there's all these hijinks and jokes and stuff. Shakespeare's done plays like that before, so I would definitely and I expected it to be a lot funnier as well. I thought there were moments where I was like, wow, this is supposed to be a comedy. It was much more of a the movie itself was much more of a comedy drama, or really just more like a drama with some comedic elements. I mean, especially towards the end with the whole argument that the two main female characters are having with the two male leads, two of the male leads anyway, about the rings and everything. But we'll get into that all a little later. But yeah, that's just how I feel about it. Now, what I recommend is to other people. Definitely. I think that if you're going to start watching Shakespeare, this is the first adaptation you to go with because, again, it's very accessible. And personally, I think it's the best Shakespeare adaptation we've seen so far. Out of all the ones we've explored so far, this is definitely the one that I enjoyed watching the most. It was a lot of fun. And it was just well made, and I learned a lot about Shakespeare from it. And I got out of this story what I think you were supposed to get out of it. And not necessarily, which isn't to say that there is necessarily one objective way of looking at it, because it is a bit controversial. And I keep saying this, but we will get into all of that in a second. But yeah, I mean, I think it's very effective. It was a very effective adaptation of a very effective play. And it deserves a lot of credit for that. In terms of how I felt about the technical aspects now, I love that this movie was filmed on location in Italy and Luxembourg. It looked very true to period to me, and everything about it, otherwise technically was solid. The music, and the singing as well. That was another thing that I didn't write down in my notes here, but the singing was great too, and the music and everything. It was all very period. Maybe it's not necessarily period accurate, but it felt period accurate for me, and that's really all I need as a layman, as a casual viewer. But yeah, I also. This is just more subjective. This is more personal for me, but I really love that soft kind of golden early 2000s look to the actual film itself. It has that nice grain to it that it somehow makes the film more tangible. I don't like this new digital. I don't like the way. I don't like how I guess the cold perfection of digital. I don't like the way that looks. It's too seamless. It's too easy. When you watch a movie that's like 10 years old now, there's something. Or beyond. I mean, there's just something that kind of just brings you into it that we don't have these days, and that might have to do with the way we just consume media or whatever. Maybe because I grew up watching those movies, I'm just so used to it that I see that as my I see the graininess and that golden look as kind of the template for everything, the model that everything should follow. But still, I stand by what I say in that. I think there's some tangibility to it that needs to be considered. It's like I don't like how kind of unfeeling everything's become. It's too nice. It's too neat. You need to have that distance, I suppose, from yourself and the screen. But I don't know. Anyway, that has nothing to do with this. But I figured I'd mention it. But yeah, one thing that this adaptation does differently from the original play itself, it is very serious, and especially with regards to how the Jewish population in Italy at the time, or in Venice at the time, were being treated. And this movie opens up with the scroll talking about how, giving you a little context about how providing historical background as to how the Italian Jewish people were treated in Venice during the 1600s. And it really, for me, I know that it's a choice on the director. I know that it might be, some could argue that it's a little biased and a bit, again, sacrilegious, let's say, for a director to come in and kind of insert their own flair into something and to change up things or add things that weren't necessarily within the original work. Although I would argue that this was in the original work, and we'll get into my reasons for that a bit later. But yeah, I agree with his perspective. I agree with it. I think because he argues that Shakespeare meant to portray the character of Shylock, played by Al Pacino, the ever famous, the legendary Al Pacino of Godfather and Scent of a Woman fame. Great movies, excellent movies, and a ton of other stuff too. But it's Al Pacino, one of the best American actors of all time, or at least of modern, you know, cinematic history, let's just say. But anyway, I thought I thought he did a great job, but we'll get into that later. The historical background, those opening, the titles, the crawls, and everything, that text really helped flesh the character of Shylock out for me and make him more complex. And I do agree with the whole perspective that Shakespeare did intend for him to be a complex, sympathetic character, and not just a racist or xenophobic caricature. And the main supporting evidence I have for that perspective is the "hath not a Jew's eyes" speech. But we're going to talk about that later. But I wanted to give you a little bit of I wanted to introduce that now. Anyway, the film, yeah, I mean the film. Another thing I liked about the movie is that it isn't afraid to show that most of the main characters live in great wealth and status, and that there's a more, let's say, real world beyond them. There's a lot of casual hedonism and wastefulness on their part, especially with regard to Bassanio and Gratiano, who are kind of, they're young bachelors, they're young, rich, wealthy bachelors, but Bassanio, the whole story happens because Bassanio wastes all his money just kind of fucking around and having too much fun and being wasteful with it. And it's good that it doesn't try to portray them as just like these ideal whatever, especially considering the times and how let's just say court biased or whatever the society Shakespeare was living in at the time was. It's like it would be very easy for him to just make all the rich people seem virtuous and great and whatever. Maybe if they are a bit flawed or whatever, just kind of silly and kind of like I don't know, you scruff them on the head and you go, oh, you little bastard, you're a little fucker, but I love you anyway, you're great, you're too fun to get mad at or whatever, that kind of shit. They didn't do that. No, it was again a very humane portrayal, and I liked that everyone had flesh to them. They were all fleshed out. They were all three-dimensional. And the world that this story takes place in is occupied by characters like Lancelot and old Gobbo, who are just these lower-class servants and who are somewhat looked down upon by some of the heroes like Bassanio and Gratiano. And in particular, when I think about this, I think of mostly the scene where Lancelot and old Gobbo, the blind man, and his son, who used to work for for Shylock, for Al Pacino's character, they come to visit Bassanio, and Lancelot requests that he become a servant to Bassanio. And then he does, but he shows up with a dove, and it's like really poorly cooked, and it's not good. And he and Bassanio and Gratiano, because they're rich, because they have better tastes and everything, they kind of look down upon it. And the film isn't like it makes it funny, it's funny, it's still funny, and I'm sure it's from the play too, but it makes it funny, and it's a good play, it's a good time for comedy, but it takes into account the internal logic of its own world. And that's what I liked about it. It wasn't afraid to show that they're kind of asshole-ish. I love it when things aren't, when things are more complex than they should be, I guess. And what I mean by that is that, a lot of, I'm used to modern media kind of dumbing things down to make people more likable or whatever. I don't believe in that, I think they were perfectly likable because they were real, you know what I mean? And I think they were more likable because they were portrayed as they probably were, as they really are in the most authentic selves or whatever. That it's a minor detail, but it's something that I think needs to be taken into consideration when we view the film and the play overall. And it will lead into the controversy that we'll get into a little later. So just keep that in mind. In terms of the cast, I thought Lynn Collins, who played Portia, she's very attractive, super pretty, and just a perfect look too. I know that well, she's an American, so she's not necessarily like she's not a Brit. And for someone who isn't a native Brit, by the way, she did a really good accent. I believed it the whole way through. I didn't know what nationality she was until I looked it up afterwards. But yeah, she did a really good job, and she just has that kind of perfect Shakespearean look, that was popularized in like the late, let's say, late 19th century to early 20th century, in all the paintings and everything, all the modern conception we have of like what something that is like stereotypically Shakespearean. They did that iconically Shakespearean. She has that iconic Shakespearean look to me, and it's good, even though it's I guess kind of if you were going to go for like a completely accurate version of this adaptation of the play, you would have to have them all be Venetians, if not Italians, if not actual like native Venetians. You would have to go all out in that way because it is set in Vienna or Venice. Jeez, I almost said Vienna, Venice, and But I mean, it's fine. And the only reason why it's fine, by the way, I get that there is a bit of a double standard when it comes to this stuff, but the reason why it's fine is because Shakespeare was a Brit, and so it's like, well, he wrote the story. It's like with the Romans. It's like how a lot of ancient Greeks and Romans and stuff. They're not actually portrayed by Greeks. Like some of some of the most well-known adaptations, let's just say in the Western world or whatever, in the popular cultural consciousness, let's just say, are from the Brits, and that's just because I don't know, they hold them in high esteem, and they do a lot of adaptations about it. And they've kind of got this Greco-Roman obsession. They're obsessed. They love antiquity. And they do a really good job with it, and so it's like, and also there's the bias because they're the dominant, whatever, they're the dominant tribe or society or whatever, or they may or may not, well, they were at the time or whatever, that's what it is, and I'm not going to pretend that it isn't that, and I'm not going to pretend as if I feel any differently than how I do. That's how I feel, and that's probably why. But I don't question it too much. I do question it a little bit, but it's like it's not a bad thing to me. It's just the way it is. That's kind of how I see it. So there's my little spiel on that. But some of the other actors, Jeremy Irons was great as Antonio, despite not being in the film very much. But then again, I don't think his character's in the play a lot. I think he kind of does what he's supposed to. He fulfills his role, he serves his role, and moves on. But he did great. Like it was great. I love Jeremy Irons. He's a really good actor. He's one of those classical kind of prestigious actors. Got a lot of respect for people like that. When I see him, I just think actor. He is that kind of prototypical, like paradigmatic actor for me. Joseph Fiennes as Bassanio, he performed perfectly well as well. And this is just a minor gripe on my part, but to me, his look, like it's just his physical appearance and how he I guess held the character. It kind of reminds me too much of like a typical late 90s to like early 2000s teen drama show protagonist or something, like some Dawson's Creek character. But yeah, it wasn't nearly enough to pull me out of the film or anything like that. And it was honestly fitting. I mean, regardless, of anything, it was fitting. Regardless of my personal feelings towards it, especially considering that this is, after all, a young bachelor looking for love and all that. So, maybe it works. It did work, but it's just, I noticed it. And it was the one thing I noticed. Out of anything else in the movie, all the other parts were perfect. I was perfectly immersed. I was tuned in, the entire time. But that was the one thing that kind of got me. I was like, huh, he looks like a Dawson's Creek extra or something. But, anyway. And then, of course, Al Pacino kills it as Shylock. Great actor. There's no doubt about that. Even if his method is easy to pick up on once you notice it, do you know what I mean? Like he has a very particular way of reading his lines, but it works here and to great effect. It's one of the most memorable Shakespeare performances, in fact, that I've seen thus far. Even better than Benedict Cumberbatch's Hamlet in that 2015 production. But all in all, everyone on the cast does a fantastic job, but those ones in particular stood out to me, so that's why I had to give them special mention. All the other everyone who played, from Nerissa to Jessica to old Gobbo, they were all perfect. They had the perfect look for it. They did their jobs. It was fantastic. I love it when things come together. And I think this movie definitely comes together, and I think the play definitely comes together. But it works. I love it when things work. I can never say enough about things that work. I can never compliment things that work quite enough. I don't think. especially after seeing the last one we saw, Richard II, which just it should have worked, but it didn't. It's such a nice breath of fresh air to have something like this that just it works. It's beautiful how much it works. It just has such a nice like artistic aesthetic, technical, whatever you want to call it, cohesion to it, adaptive cohesion to it as well. I would say I don't even, again, take my opinion with a grain of salt, but it's like I can't imagine this being too far off from the actual play itself. I feel like this is how you should adapt Shakespeare. This is like a perfect adaptation. If every single play was adapted like this in like an early 2000s movie with as much effort and craft that went into this one, you would have a really great oeuvre or canon to explore, a catalog of adaptations to get into. But anyway, um, so before we get into like well, before we get into this, did you want to say anything? Did you want to add anything to what I was talking about just now, Simone, about the technical aspects and everything else that came before that?
Yeah, I don't know whether I gave it a 7.5. The actors really did a great job. Maybe I just gave it a 7.5 because I expected to be a comedy, but all in all, the story, it really appeals to me. It's just I don't know. I, I don't know if it's prudent. I just basis my rating because I just heard that it's a comedy. So I don't know. Maybe I need to change my mind regarding that thing. So I agree with you with especially Al Pacino. He really did a great job to get me into the story, or who is really Shylock character is. I I really like that part. I really like all his screen time. To be honest, that he's able to deliver his lines and to get me into his story or to understand his character.
Right, exactly. I think he definitely inhabits the character with like this totality and greatness. But but it's weird. He simultaneously completely, fully inhabits the character, but also adds his own personal flair to it. He has also his own spin, like that cadence, the way of talking, the pacing of his words, and the emotion that he puts behind them. They come together to make this really great performance, and that's why he's a good actor. For people say he's a good actor for a reason, and I got to give him credit, where credit's due. Some of his performances are a bit overrated in my opinion, but this is definitely not among those. Um, now this one's just I want to ask you this because let's have a little fun before we get into like the nitty gritty of the story itself. But just for curiosity's sake, would you, Simone, would you have wanted to have lived in 1600s Venice, just based on what you saw from the movie and everything?
I guess it's really different from the life that I'm living or the reality that we're living right now. So I guess it's a great experience to uh, to live from scratch. I guess that things are not in front of you, and when you wake up in the morning and you need something, or it's just it really gives you the feels of life of what life is really all about. I guess that the introspections and it will enable you to think deeper in life. I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely live in 1600s Venice. I mean, it seems like it seems like a lot of fun, so long as you aren't Jewish. By the way, so long as you aren't Jewish. But I'm Catholic, so I would have gotten by just fine. It would have been great for me. Especially since, of course, Italy is the birthplace of Catholicism and all that. And you got the Vatican right there. You got Vatican City there, and whatever. It's closer to the source, and I got family from there anyway because I am part Italian. So I don't know. Maybe I'm related to some of the people in there. Hopefully, the people I was related to didn't hate Jewish people for no particular reason. But anyway, but yeah, 1600s Venice. It seems like it'd be the perfect place to work hard and play hard, as the saying from 5 years ago goes. It's a very intellectual, cultured city, but one that's also full of temptations and the good kinds of temptations. Good food, good women, water. architecture, fresh air, the sea, the breeze of the sea. It sounds like paradise if you ask me. And it's a shame that they had to be assholes back in the 17th century. It's like that's the one caveat to the place. But obviously, I don't think it's that way now. But I don't know how it is now. It might be, there might be other things about it that just aren't. It might be in an. Last time I heard, I think it was like in an economic downturn or something, and like because it's not a mercantile economy anymore. I would definitely want to live in 1600s Venice specifically because it was the Renaissance. There was all that learning, there was the advancement, there's intellectual progress being made. Natural sciences were becoming a thing, or natural philosophy was becoming like straight up science for the first time and all that. Just a great, really momentous, really important time to be alive. Lots of new things happening every single day. Very exciting time to be alive. I think, and especially if you were rich too. And I would want to be one of the rich kids too. I would want to be one of the let's say the what are who is it, Basanios or Gratianos of Venice. Yeah, but yeah, seems like a good time, hell of a good time. Um, so now let me ask you this to get a little more serious. Are there many Jewish people in the Philippines? And if so, how are they treated? Do you know?
I don't know. I haven't encountered any Jewish people here, or I don't know. I just learned something on the television last summer that they showed that they helped some Jewish during the Holocaust here. So I never thought that it's possible or it took place here because I never encountered that much foreigners here, or it's just a lot of Filipinos roam around here.
Ah, I see. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Um, okay, so let's get into the actual play itself. I was just curious about that. So I guess just to start, did you feel bad for the Prince of Morocco when he picked the wrong chest? He was the one with all the men behind him and stuff. Like he had that whole group of people. He was the one who picked the. I think he picked the gold chest because he wanted what everybody he wanted what everybody else wanted. He thought that the gold chest represented the what was it, Portia. Did you feel bad for him when he picked the wrong chest?
I don't know if it's okay. I laugh at it when he didn't get the right chest. I don't know. I think that's funny for me.
Well, yeah, I thought it was funny, but like, did you wish he would have rather gotten it? Because I laughed, but I was like, oh man, he seemed like a nice guy. It would be like it's a shame that he didn't actually get her in the end.
Um, I don't know. For me, it's okay that he didn't get the right chest. I guess because it seems that Portia didn't like him at all.
Do you think it was meant to happen though?
Yes, given that the story they introduced Basanio that he likes Portia, so I guess that I expected that Basanio will get the righteous and then marry Portia in the end.
Well, yeah, yeah, but besides that, like, just take a hypothetical for a minute. Like, what, like, let's explore the other kind of possibilities. It's supposed to be a fun question. Have a little fun with it. What was really so bad about the guy that he wasn't able to pick the right chest? Besides the fact that the story was written so that he wouldn't.
Maybe because he traveled for a far away land, and then it turns out that he missed the opportunity or the chance that or the reason why he traveled that far. So maybe I need to feel bad about him that traveling for a different part of the world or something.
But do you think
And
their
then
cultures were too different? You think they were too just far away to really, make that like connection or whatever? Just it was very jarring because he's from like a completely different part of the world, different continent and everything, and their cultures are different, whatever, their worldviews and everything. Do you think it just wouldn't have been a good fit?
yeah, yeah, definitely that it won't be a good fit. There there's a great distance between their cultures, so I think it will not also work if he will get the right chest.
Why do you think he had so many like guys with him?
Maybe it's his maybe some are friends or some his servants. Maybe their culture is about uh, more engaged or more in a community basis or a friendship or camaraderie or something. I just what I thought.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, but I thought about it for a little bit, and I think at the end of the day, he probably would have treated Portia like a kind of like a trophy, and that's why he was destined to pick the golden chest because he picked it because and basically I think the reason why he liked her so much was because everybody else did. There were so many suitors after her. He wanted to be the one that would be able to get her in the end, and so it was more like a competition for him. It was more about winning a prize for him. Portia was more of a prize to him than like an actual human being. And I don't think because of that, I don't think he would have been able to treat her like 50-50 the way that like his other half, the way that Bassanio was able to at the end. That when he eventually gets with her, and picks the right chest, it wasn't a good fit because he didn't really care. It was a more superficial reason for why he was even trying to court her in the first place. That's what I think, anyway. But would you agree with that, or what? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you. That there's I forgot what's written on the or encrypted on the chest. It's something connected to his to who he really is, I guess.
No, well, it's about how like you should have what every man wants to have, basically. And then when he opens it, it says that not all that glitters is gold, not all that glistens is gold, and that's a famous expression, and that comes from Shakespeare. And I think it's a good point. It's like, yeah, you shouldn't always want the superficial things in life, the material. It's not worth it. You got to have something a little more substantive, a little more, let's say, spiritually nourishing. Let's say, but yeah. And then there was also the Prince of Aragon, who was the second one. He was the Spaniard, I think, who I think he picked the silver chest, and I didn't feel bad for him. He was arrogant, egocentric tool anyway, and Portia would have just been miserable with him. And I believe his said it had something to do with how I forgot what it had. Man, I forgot honestly. I can look it up real quick though, but I remember him saying that he was a fool to even come to court her in the first place, and then he left being double the fool. What did you think about him though? Did you feel bad for him when he didn't get the right one?
Uh, I think it's a relief for Porsche. I feel good for Porsche that the man didn't get the chance because he doesn't really feel like that he wanted to court Porsche or maybe he's looking for something to possess or to get, but he's really arrogant.
Yeah, it was just one of those typical like here's some arranged marriage kind of things. Like it was she dodged a bullet with it, I would say. But here are the chest inscriptions, by the way. So I'm going to read them all. This is the gold one. Uh, the gold one says, and I think this is what's inside, by the way, not what's outside. But hold on, sorry. Ah, okay. Let's see. Okay, so the gold one says, all that glistens is not gold. Often you have heard that told. Many a man his life hath sold, but my outside to behold. Gilded tombs do worms enfold. Had you been as wise as bold, young in limbs and judgment old, your answer had not been inscrolled. Farewell, your suit is cold. Basically telling you not to trust everything you see, to think about things, to think more critically, to be more mature, to be above just simple basic temptation, and to actually think, to be rational. That's what that is. The silver one says, yeah, the silver one says, some there be that shadows kiss, such have but a shadow's bliss. There be fools, iwis, silvered or, and so is this. Take what wife you will to bed. I will ever be your head. So be gone, you are sped. And if I'm being completely honest, I don't really know what that one means. I think it's just a less obvious version of the gold, maybe. Yeah, I don't really know, honestly. Do you have any idea?
I don't know. Maybe it's just related to the gold one.
Yeah, I think it's just more gold. Yeah, really. But then of course there's the lead, which is unassuming, and it's kind of like if you've seen Indiana Jones, the last well, the last one. God, what's the last one called? Hold on, I'm forgetting everything. Well, because I didn't plan to talk about this, but the Last Crusade. Yeah, it's like at the end of the Last Crusade where Jesus' cup, the right cup he has to drink, the chalice that isn't poison. It's like the one that saves Indiana Jones in the end is Jesus's cup, which is just, the Holy Grail is tiny. It's just this regular carpenter's cup. It's very unassuming. There's no jewels on it. It's just made out of clay. It's very basic, and that's it's about it's humility. It's humbleness. It's being an everyday, normal, authentic individual who doesn't need to um, prop themselves up with all these furnishments and ornaments and whatnot. They could just be themselves and all that. Very unassuming. And so that's what this is. It's similar to this, in the lead. The fact that the lead is unassuming and not as appealing, not as enticing, not as tempting as the gold or the silver. And the inscription on the lead chest reads as follows: you that choose not by the view, chance as fair, and choose as true. Since this fortune falls to you, be content and seek no new. If you be well pleased with this, and hold your fortune for your bliss, turn you where your lady is, and claim her with a loving kiss. And it summarizes for us. It tells us why Portia's father even wanted people to have to go through this test. He was vetting candidates. He was vetting suitors through this process because he wanted to find someone who was, secure, confident, comfortable with themselves, all together, all put together, and someone who was genuinely there to, just a worthy candidate. That's what makes a worthy candidate. Someone who doesn't need to gain something, I guess, superficial through his marriage to Portia, the guy's daughter. When you're going to pass your daughter off to someone, you want to make sure that they're decent and whatnot. And, yeah, sure, Bassanio is a bit of a screw up with how much he spent and, everything that brought him up to that point to where he needed to. And, and that's kind of part of the irony of it, too, is that even though he is attractive and everything, like, yeah, he still is a spendthrift and he still is kind of just marrying this woman. Not, well, he likes her, but, and she likes him, too. But it's like he's marrying her because he needs his money back, and he wants to be like a bona fide gentleman, so to speak. So I guess that's still there, but I mean, I guess for the times, it is a pretty good deal. Like, it's better than nothing. It's as close as you're going to get to true love, let's just say, considering the class that they're in and considering the fact that, this is a story from the 1600s, I would say it's pretty good. And the fact that they do genuinely care for each other. And again, they're willing to do that 50-50 relationship thing that they mentioned. She's his other half and he's her half, and they fit well together. And it's, it's nice, but that's what it is. And that part is a bit idealistic. That's where the bias of the writer or whatever shows. But, it's like, whatever. It's fine. It's not that big a deal to me. What do you think?
And I agree with you that I don't know. It's just the Bassanio came there just to the reason for all this happening. For example, that he needs to court Portia because he decided that he borrowed the money, so maybe he doesn't have the choice but to do what he's supposed to do.
Right, but
So
then he goes there and he actually likes her, so it's okay in the end, right?
yeah, so I guess it's a bonus that he likes her, that he likes her and she likes her back. So she's lucky. He's lucky.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? It makes me feel good, and it's satisfying to see, so I don't mind it, even if it is a bit, fairy tale-ish or whatever. But anyway, so now answer me this, Simone. Do you think that Portia's legal advice when she was pretending to be the lawyer, do you think that her legal advice to the Duke during the trial scene was fair, considering the fact that she isn't an actual lawyer and that she was biased to Antonio and the others and wanted them to get off and, she wasn't impartial the way that a typical lawyer should be?
Uh, yeah, yes. Sometimes I guess that what she told is some way true, or it's true. I guess that it makes sense. It makes sense that she's able to change Shylock's mind that what he's really doing is really bad. So I think what she did is make kind of makes sense. It makes sense in the first place that I kind of remember. I still remember her lines. For example, is it okay if I just read it? For for us, you urge justice. Be assured, you shall have justice more than you desire. So, and that's really I really like that line. So that summarizes what this is all about.
Yeah, it's a good pick. Yeah, definitely for sure. And by the way, I don't know why I said judges aren't or lawyers aren't supposed to be impartial. It's the judges that are supposed to be impartial. The lawyers are defending their clients or whatever. But the thing about it is that she's not technically his client. She's his wife. And so that kind of complicates the whole situation. But still, yeah, I would agree with you on that. But so what you're saying, your argument is that the ends justify the means in this case. It's justifiable because she tries to convince him to be merciful and everything, and she still wants justice in her own way. So you think it's fine. It doesn't really make a difference.
Uh, yes, I guess that makes sense what she did, but it's still bad. It's the wrong thing about it is this: she puts the authority into herself that she's not a real lawyer, so that's the bad thing about it. That it wasn't legal at all. So it's just an act to save somebody.
But ultimately, is it more good or bad? Would you say?
I think it's more good because all she say has makes sense, and it really justify what she's saying, that even though she's not a real lawyer, but she acts more like a lawyer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's written that way. Like you were saying earlier, it's written to be that she's supposed to be good. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I thought I'd be a little more torn between agreeing with you and disagreeing, but I agree with you. Yeah, I don't know. That's not like the big controversy here. So, but moving towards more, I guess, getting ramping that up a bit, the degree of controversy. Let's get into some of the main characters. So tell me this: do you think Antonio, Bassanio, Gratiano, Lorenzo, Portia, Nerissa, and all the other upper class characters, do you think they're genuinely good people? Would you say?
Um, uh, I guess they're genuinely good. Uh, I mean, in the sense that they were portrayed that we never get a chance to see them do something things that bad. I guess that they're just trying to get to get in life. But in some aspect, for example, their view about the Jews, for example, that they in the end they asked Bassanio to convert into Christianity.
Oh
So I
no, it
think
was
that's
Shylock. It was Shylock.
Shylock. I guess Shylock. They try to convert. So they try to ask him to convert into Christianity. So I think that's a bit bad. I guess that it's wrong. Maybe it's okay because it's given that it was said in the 17th century. So maybe it's not their choice. Maybe it's just what the society dictate them to do.
Yeah, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but yeah, that is one of the main controversies. But yeah, for sure. Um, well, and then on that same token, do you think Shakespeare is trying to portray them as truly good, or did he like fully like good, pure, whatever, or do you think he intended to acknowledge their wealth and high place in society to prove a different point? Because what I think kind of keeps them from being like perfectly good was going back to the whole thing. It's a very minor scene, but I thought it was there was significance to it. But with him between Bassanio, Gratiano, and Lancelot and Old Gobbo. Who Lancelot comes. He used to be Shylock's servant, but he wants to become Bassanio's servant instead. And he gives them like a dish of like it's like really shitty dove or whatever, and they kind of look down upon it. For me, that kind of captures the kind of the ignorance of their position and everything, and also Portia and how her maid and Nerissa is like constantly reminding her that like, yeah, sure, your life, it's not fun to have to like deal with this like three chest situation that your dad left behind for you and everything, and all the suitors and all that. But like at the end of the day, your life is a lot better than like 90% of people's lives. Like you do live in great luxury, and I hate using this word because people use it for all the wrong reasons these days. They've kind of politicized it as of late, but privilege. It's like, yeah, they come from very very insulated kind of nice lives where they can afford to waste all this money and not become completely destitute or whatever. Whereas once well, if the same happens to Shylock, he's done for. So it's like, yeah, there is that kind of inequality and everything to take into consideration. Like, do you think Shakespeare was meant to convey that, or do you think I might be looking a little too into it? What do you think? What are your thoughts?
Um, I guess it's Shakespeare, so I guess that he's trying to portray that in reality. So Shakespeare is Shakespeare, so he's not too shallow. So I agree with your idea that he's trying to portray uh, the differences, the privileges that we have in the society. It's just this place just is more focused on the privilege of the people from the higher class. So
Well, and the reason I say that is because, when you really think about the movie, it's like, or and the play, I guess, it's like, what do these, what are the heroes of the play? Let's say, what do they really do that's so good? It's like Antonio is like Antonio is the reason why Shylock is so bitter. He's a straight up anti-Semite. And it seems like Gratiano's an anti-Semite as well. It's like they seem like they all have that sympathy, or maybe not that sympathy, but that bias, that prejudice. They seem to not really give a shit. It's like, that's there, like that exists. That you cannot deny that's part of it. Because you got to look at it from all aspects. And when you really think about it, it's like, what do they do that is so good? Like, do they contribute to society or the world in like a meaningful way? It's like, what do they do that's good? Like they help each other, I guess. Like basically, though, but like all they really do in the story is fall in love, get married, and that's it. They get together and then they walk off into the sunset. And but then I guess there's stuff there about maybe that's an oversimplification because there is something in there about loyalty and friendship, and being willing to put everything on the line in order to save your friends and not leaving them behind. The fact that they campaigned so fiercely for Bassanio's freedom and everything, and to overturn the decision to have him literally get like a pound of his own flesh lobbed off and all that, and to fight against the Shylock's need for vengeance and all that. It's all there, but I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's like it's not. I don't know. It's like they seem to do good in a much more subtle kind of normal way, and that's why when I think of this play and this movie, I think of the word humanely. It's very humane. It's like it's humane, but I mean, of course, and it's funny because then there's also that aspect of prejudice and anti-Semitism and everything. But yeah, this is a very grounded kind of normal, everyday slice of life story. And so the good that happens isn't really like it's there, but it's not. It's not as it doesn't pop out to you as much as some other things might. Is there anything you want to add to that before we move on to the next topic?
yeah, I agree with you that it's more on the reality of life, the everyday aspects that will happen that are happening in our life. So it wasn't that as it's more humane, I guess. That as I like to say that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so now going off of that, do you think the final court ruling was fair? Would you consider that to be truly justice? And if you don't know what for just to update the listeners and everything in yourself, if in case you forgot, the they ultimately rule. The Duke of Venice ultimately rules that Shylock has to give half of his money, half of his possessions and stuff to his daughter and her husband. He has to give it to Jessica and I believe his name is Lorenzo. Jessica and Lorenzo. He has to when he dies that he has to give half of his stuff to them as part of his estate, his inheritance, whatever, to their as their inheritance. Um, and then half of it to the state. But then the Duke says you don't have to give half of it to the state. We'll give you half your half back. So he gets to keep half of his stuff, but then the other half he has to give to his own daughter and her husband, even though they've converted to Christianity. Even though she's converted to Christianity for Lorenzo. But yeah, to me that seems like a pretty reasonable. That's like a normal thing. He probably would have done that anyway if she hadn't married a Christian or whatever. But then yeah, and then also what else is and then the whole thing about having to convert to Christianity. What do you think the forced conversion? Do you think that was a good thing or a bad thing? And do you think overall that the Duke of Venice's final sentence or decision was justice? Was it fair? Was it just? What do you think? What are your thoughts on all of that?
I guess the part about giving his wealth into half of his wealth to her daughter, I think it's okay because it's her daughter in the end of the day. But then I don't like about the idea about um, releasing him or um, giving him the verdict to convert into the Christianity, given that he's really Jewish. Jewish, I guess that I don't know. He got hold into his religion. He really all he really is his religion. So maybe it's a bit bad for him to place him or ask him to convert into Christianity. But I think it's below the belt, I guess. But and that's a story, and that will really happen, and that's a reality during those days.
And what do you mean by below the belt exactly?
Um, it's just it's really Jewish, but maybe it's just insensitive, I guess, to ask him to convert it to Christianity.
But why exactly? Because it's such a big part of his identity.
Yeah, yeah. It's just like his you're robbing his whole identity, I guess. That if he converts himself into Christianity, he's no longer the shy like that we know. I think he needs to change his character or everything that he really is.
Okay, interesting. And we will expand upon that a little later. But I just well, I want to ask, what decision would you have come to yourself if you were in the judge's seat and you were able to decide, or the Duke's seat rather, and you were able to decide what happened at the end? What would you have done differently?
I don't know. It's a tough question, so I guess that I maybe given the circumstances, I'll do the same thing. I guess maybe I don't have the choice. I guess that it is the society during those days that they think that that's uh, that's the best thing to do or that's the right thing to do. So I don't have the choice anymore. But if I'm given a choice that to change everything, so I guess that I it's okay to cut his wealth or give half of this wealth to his daughter. It's okay, I'll do it. And but I don't wanna ask him to convert it to Christianity because for me it's just below the belt, or I guess that it's really insulting.
Okay, interesting. And I would probably do the same, but we'll cover that in a second. But I want to ask. This is like the main kicker. This is the kicker of the episode here, and what I really wanted to talk about. This is the big controversy. Do you think that the character of Shylock is an anti-Semitic caricature or a tragic hero?
I agree with it that it's I think it could go both way that it's just his anti-Semitic caricature. I think that's how people will view him. That how will this society will see him as a part of the Jews or his being a Jewish. So I guess that it's a part of the caricature that maybe it's just a stereotype of being a Jewish that he's being that way. So I agree that it was an anti-Semitic caricature, and it could be it could also a tragic or his life is tragic. So because it really is. I don't know.
Well, I personally don't believe that he's an anti-Semitic caricature, and I'll explain why now. I think he's definitely a tragic hero, and I say this because there are many points throughout the story in which Shakespeare treats him humanely. He's not a cut and dry black and white villain, and he seems to me like he's one of the earliest prominent examples of a tragic hero. He reminds me a lot of Doctor Octopus from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 film, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. Like let's think about the facts for a second here. Shylock has lost his daughter, his money, the ring that he proposed to his dead wife with, which was the one personal possession he cared about the most. He has to deal with this discrimination from Antonio and all the others every single day, just because he's Jewish and all that. By the very end, he loses his faith, and therefore the biggest part of his identity as religion in those days was, after all, it was everything. It was a really big deal, and you know his religion was one that brought upon him much great suffering and prejudice at the hands of the 17th century Venetian people. So I think he's definitely way more of a tragic hero than he is an anti-Semitic caricature, if he is at all an anti-Semitic caricature. And I'm not just talking about the film when I say that. I'm talking about the original play itself as well. What I like about his story is that it doesn't give in to fantasy or idealism the way, or rather his arc. What I like about his arc is that it doesn't give in to fantasy or idealism the way it does for the other characters like Bassanio and Gratiano. I feel like it kind of, those other ones are a bit too like idealized for me, a little too sentimental, just a little bit, just a smidge. Everything for them kind of works out a bit too easily in the end. Everyone gets together, they all have the big laugh and shit, and then they walk off into the sunset. Just seems a bit too perfect for me. It's wrapped up with a neat little bow that just kind of doesn't ring realism as much as Shylock's story does. Shylock's arc is much more grounded. Even though he technically, because even though he technically deserves the revenge he seeks, his conquest for it ultimately just makes things worse for him. It objectively wouldn't have been more worth it for him to have. Objectively, it would have been worth it for him to have shown mercy towards Antonio when he had the opportunity to. He could have reversed the decisions and everything. He could have taken twice the money that he was owed, and put the whole thing behind him, but and been the bigger man when he had the chance to do so. But he didn't, and because of that, bad things happened to him. And I think that kind of goes to show that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how things happen. How things happened to get him to the point where he wanted to get revenge. Because when he got that revenge, or when he tried to get that revenge, it ultimately ruined him even further. And the point is that it isn't even worth risking that revenge. Going back to Hamlet, Shakespeare really wants to drive home the point in a lot of his plays that revenge just isn't worth it. Revenge leads to so much worse. It does nothing but bad. It brings about nothing but more suffering and misery and whatnot, and strife. It isn't worth risking everything you've ever cared about and held dear in order to bring misery upon another human being. Even if you actually kind of deserve it, like Shylock, you could say he definitely deserved to get a little vengeance, But at the end of the day, no one deserves it. No one deserves it at all. No one is above anybody else. We should all be treated equally and all that. That's kind of the message I see. It's an egalitarian message. We're all in this together. It applies to everybody. It's a human issue. It's a human predicament. That's the overall message I think Shakespeare's trying to convey. And that's why it's so tragic for him to have had to have learned it that way. Shylock has to learn this the hard way, and so it's another cautionary tale. Shakespeare's showing us the example of Shylock so that we don't end up doing it ourselves. But then again, while I say that, take my opinion with a grain of salt, because I'm not going to pretend that I know as if. No, I'm not going to pretend as if I know what it's like to be Jewish. From what I can tell, those who practice the Jewish faith take it very seriously, and it's a major part of their individual identity. It means a hell of a lot to them. And, as a Catholic religion, I'm just going to be honest, religion has never, as a modern day Catholic, let's say, religion has just never been a very big deal to me. I kind of pick and choose with it. And I haven't regularly gone to church since I was 10 years old. So I won't pretend as if I have any horse in this particular race. I could definitely see the character of Shylock offending a lot of people today still. But at the same time, I think the betrayal is justified by the things I've already, by the reasons I've already outlined. No one is entitled to revenge regardless of who you are or how bad you're treated. And again, it harkens back to Hamlet. Shakespeare really wants to drive home the point that nothing good ever comes of revenge. That and the fact that people are still able to have discourse about the play today is testament enough to the justification of the character of Shylock, in my opinion. Controversial and uncomfortable things they're essential for intellectual progress. The fact that we can debate this today, again, just like with the Taming of the Shrew, goes to show how effective it was, and how powerful it was, because it makes you think. It makes you think more critically about this kind of stuff. Plus, just Al Pacino kicks asses in. So I think that does him at least some justice, if he even needs justice. He gets a great actor, a world-class actor to portray him. I think that's a pretty sweet deal, if you ask me. And he does so sympathetically, and the movie does so sympathetically. It treats him, again, humanely, very humanely. It treats him, and again, I would not, even if I'm wrong about all of this, and Shakespeare really was just as anti-Semitic as the next guy, which he could very well be. It won't do anyone any good banning him. And I'm not trying to be an apologist for anything here, but it's just we can only move forward as a species by learning from the mistakes of the past. And that being said, I don't think the character of Shylock was a mistake at all. I think some entities like the Nazis appropriated him and the whole stereotype and everything. And some people use the word Shylock to refer to a Jewish person, not even necessarily just a Jewish person, but a person who steals your money and everything. But that's them. That's not Shakespeare. That's other entities appropriating those things for their own weird, selfish, ends and whatnot. And I seriously doubt that Shakespeare would have written that "hath not a Jew's eyes" speech and characterized Shylock as he did if he just wanted him to be a two-dimensional clown for the duration of the play, and in any case, what this kind of all ties into is just this precept of always questioning things. Always question things. Never take things as they are, as they're presented to you or whatever. Don't just blindly accept everything. Anything actually. Don't just blindly accept anything. Always question. It's only your fault. It gets to a point where it's only your own fault if you never doubt what's being presented to you. At that point, that's a you problem. If anything, Shylock represents a need for rational thinking. What do you have to say about any of that, Simone? Do you want to say anything about that before we move on to the next topic?
I guess you already said what the character of Sherlock really is, so I agree with you about it. That I just realized something. I realized a lot of things more about him. With the things that you just discussed. So I think Shylock really did a great job in this. Al Pacino really did a great job in this movie to portray the character of Shylock, because you can really get a lot of ideas or thoughts to articulate about from his character, and that's what the character this adaptation really did great, or the portrayal or the acting, or Al Pacino did a great job regarding this matter.
Right, yeah, and I'll just read. I'll read real quick. I'll read the "hath not a Jew's eyes" speech, just so people can know what it is. Hath not. Yeah, let me just read it real quick, and you'll see. And I'll read the original text, and then I'll read the modern ones, so that you should, in case it's the modern one's more easy to understand. But he says, so. Let's see. So he's talking to his friend here, Solarino, and Solarino says, "Why? I am sure if he forfeit, thou will not take his flesh. What's that good for?" And then Shylock says, "To bait fish withal. If it will feed nothing else, it will feed my revenge. He hath disgraced me and hindered me 500,000, laughed at my losses, mocked at my gains, scorned my nation, thwarted my bargains, cooled my friends, heated mine enemies. And what's his reason? I am a Jew. Hath not a Jew eyes?" Sorry, I fucked that up. "I am a Jew. Hath not a Jew eyes? Hath not a Jew hands, organs, dimensions, senses, affections, passions, fed with the same food, hurt with the same weapons, subject to the same diseases, healed by the same means, warmed and cooled by the same winter and summer as a Christian is? If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? If you poison us, do we not die? And if you wrong us, shall we not revenge? If we are like you and the rest, we will resemble you in that. If a Jew wrong a Christian, what is his humility? Revenge. If a Christian wrong a Jew, what should his sufferance be by Christian example? Why, revenge. The villainy you teach me I will execute, and it shall go hard, but I will better the instruction. And here is the modern version in case you need it. I'll use it for fish bait. You can't eat human. Oh, let me start at the Solar. Okay, back to the. Sorry, Solarino says, but won't you take his flesh if he can't pays? What's that good for? And then Shylock says, I'll use it for fish bait. You can't eat human flesh, but if it feeds nothing else, it'll feed my revenge. He's insulted me and cost me 500,000 ducats. He's laughed at my losses, made fun of my earnings, humiliated my race, thwarted my deals, turned my friends against me, riled up my enemies, and why? Because I'm a Jew. Doesn't a Jew have eyes? Doesn't a Jew have hands, bodily organs, a human shape, 5 senses, feelings, and passions? Doesn't a Jew eat the same food, get hurt with the same weapons, get sick with the same diseases, get healed by the same medicine, and warm up in summer and cool off in winter, just like a Christian? If you prick us with a pin, don't we bleed? If you tickle us, don't we laugh? If you poison us, don't we die? And if you treat us badly, won't we try to get revenge? If we're like you in everything else, we'll resemble you in that respect. If a Jew offends a Christian, what's the Christian's kind and gentle reaction? Revenge. If a Christian offends a Jew, what punishment will he come up with if he follows the Christian example? Of course, the same thing. Revenge. I'll treat you as badly as you Christians taught me to, and you'll be lucky if I don't outdo my teachers. See? So how can Shakespeare be anti-Semitic if he's calling out the hypocrisies of the Christian faith, which was a big deal at the time, by the way. So it's a big deal that he's even taking the time to do this with Shylock. Like, it means even more because of that. This isn't some cut and dry, one-dimensional kind of character, clown character. This is a person, who has a real reason for being, the villain in this situation, for doing what he's doing. And it makes sense, and you can understand it, and you can almost get behind it if it weren't the fact that he was just so hell-bent on revenge, if he wasn't so, consumed by his need for revenge, and vengeance and everything. It makes it more complicated than, it makes it as complicated as it is, and that's why I can't accept people who are, I can't accept the opinion that he's anti-Semitic in this case, because it's just, that's like the exact opposite of anti-Semitic. He's literally saying everyone is a human being. We're all in this together. We're all the same. Doesn't matter what religion you are. Being part of a different religion doesn't make you a different species. Altogether, that's ridiculous. This very speech calls out that ridiculousness, addresses it, and repudiates it. Do you have anything you'd like to add to that, Simone, before we move on to the last few topics?
So maybe that's absurd idea to agree to that it is anti-Semitic. So anti-Semitism, it talks about hating the hatred about, or the hatred against Jews, or something. That I just realized that he never been resentful about being Jew or something. It's just I really like that part where that you just read. It just made me realize that that's just to say that we are all human beings, that we deserve to be treated well, as we enjoy the same things, whether we have the same opportunities, or we experienced the same thing. For example, the weather, the food, or something. That in the end of the day, we are all just human beings, that our fates cannot shouldn't separate us for being good or being kind to each other, I guess.
So do you think Shakespeare was anti-Semitic or not?
I think it's not. It's just like to say that I'm enlightened that it's just that that conversation justifies that he's not anti-Semitic at all. Because I don't know, how could he be anti-Semitic if he's talking about the betterment of each other, or the reality that we're supposed to live in.
Right. Yeah. That's good though. That's good. That's good that we agree on that one. because it would be kind of easy to just look at it and go, "Oh no, he's anti-Semitic, detest him, whatever." But it's like if you really think about it, it's like no, no, not at all, not at all. You know, you just pay attention to what's being said, and you'll get it. It's like no, um, but that doesn't go for his personal life. Like I don't know what the fuck he got up to in his personal life, but just within the context of this play and everything itself, no, definitely not. And you know, I just the sentiment is not there. I don't think the sentiment is not there. But anyway, so there's a famous speech in this that Portia gives when she's posing as the lawyer. It's the speech about the quality of mercy, and I just wanted to ask you about the main point of that speech. Do you believe, Simone, that mercy truly blesseth him that gives and him that takes? What do you think about that?
Uh, can you repeat that? Can you repeat the?
Sure, sure, yeah. So, do you believe that mercy truly blesseth him that gives and him that takes? And what that means is, well, it's essentially saying that mercy is more liberating than revenge. Mercy is better than revenge because it frees you and it makes you a better person. It's more moral to forgive someone than it is to take revenge, seek revenge on them, or to get revenge from from hurting them or wishing ill on them or whatever. That's basically what it's arguing. So would you agree with that or disagree? That
Oh, I agree.
mercy truly blesseth him that gives and him that takes. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree with that. That the just like what the message of Hamlet, that revenge will not get us at all, or it will not do us anything good, or it's just revenge is a never-ending cycles of hatred that it will never do good. It wouldn't do anything good at all in our everyday lives or in us as individual. It just degrade us or make us more more bad. I guess that I don't know. It's senseless. It's senseless that to take revenge. So maybe we should consider to be mercy to see things that we should be compassionate about each other so that we could live in harmony. So rather than revenge, that I don't know, it's really senseless that to live in revenge.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say, of course, I do agree with that, but I just want to try to figure out why for a sec. I would like to articulate it because I wanted to break it down because when I first went to think about this, I didn't really know why exactly it is, and I had to articulate to myself. I had to sit down and kind of go back to the basics and write out a whole thing for it. So I'll read some of that to you and to the listeners so that you know just maybe to make it a little more clear and to really get into it, you know, because there is a lot of interesting material from this speech. That's why it is, you know, that's why it is famous. It's famous for a reason, you know. It is a very significant speech, and it is the highlight of the play, I would say, and the film. You know, it is one of those the main scenes for me, especially. But yeah, you know, some people out there they say that bitterness and resentment and the need for revenge they're like prisons of the mind, and that as soon as you forgive someone, you are free of them and free of the pain they wrought upon you that led you to your need for vengeance in the first place. By demonstrating mercy where you do not necessarily have to, you are becoming the better person and liberating yourself from past hurts, and taking the first step towards moving on with your life and opening the gates to happiness. That's what I think anyway, and probably what most people do. And you know, it's stories like The Merchant of Venice that help us to not only demonstrate, not help, how about not only demonstrate but solidify that dictate of common sense that's often taken for granted in our 21st century, you know, time or whatever you want to call it, day. But yeah, yeah, I think it was very poignant and it affected me, you know, and I feel like it's going to stick with me for a while because it kind of just it made the obvious very clear, and that's what I think good art should do. Um, but yeah, yeah, because you know we say these things and we say them without really thinking about them. But then once you know why something is like let's just say this: once you know why a cliche is a cliche, you tend to appreciate it a lot more. Uh, but yeah. So last few questions. at the beginning of the play, Antonio says that he says that he's kind of like sad for some reason. Let me try to pull up. Let me pull up what it says here. So in Act One, we see when we first see Antonio commiserating with his friends Solanio and Salarino, he is pondering the unknown source of his depressive state. And here's what he says from the play itself. He says, "In sooth, I know not why I am so sad. It wearies me, you say it wearies you, but how I caught it, found it, or came by it, what stuff 'tis made of, whereof it is born, I am to learn, and such a want wit sadness makes of me that I have much ado to know myself." His friends try to guess the origin and nature of his condition by questioning him. First, they inquire as to whether or not he is worried about his investments. When he insists that that is not the reason, they ask if he is in love, which he is also quick to dismiss. It is then speculated that perhaps he has a strange temperament, as some people do, which would mean, in modern terms, that he might be manic depressive or have some sort of mental disorder or whatever, chemical imbalance, all that. This pair, his friends, quickly exit to make way for Bassanio, who is accompanied by his friends Lorenzo and Gratiano. Lorenzo can get a word in for the boisterous Gratiano, who makes sport of Antonio's melancholy, telling him that he is too serious and that he himself would rather go through life acting foolish. Well, that's really the end of that. But I just want to know, Simone, why do you think Antonio was sad at the very beginning? What do you think the reason was? Because he doesn't seem to know it. No one else seems to know it. It's ambiguous. What do you think it was? What was a possible cause?
Maybe in my own understanding, he is looking for something about life or something, or some person or a friend of him, or I don't know. He's looking for some company, or for example, I just realized that when Rizano get into the scene, it seems that Antonio's mood changed. That he doesn't look that sad at all. So maybe there are change something. Maybe it's just something related to friendship, I guess.
Do you think Antonio is in love with Bassanio?
I don't think that it's in love. Maybe it's just a platonic love or platonic love, or it's just a friendship. Because I didn't see it that way.
Yeah, yeah. Because some people argue that the reason why he's sad at the beginning of the play is because he's secretly in love with Bassanio, and he knows that Bassanio is going to get married, and that he doesn't share his feelings for him, and so he's sad about that, and it's like this closeted homosexual affection for his best friend. Um, Personally, I honestly think that he's actually worried about his money, even though he says he isn't. He denies it in front of his friends because he doesn't want them to know how bad the situation with his investments really is. Most people don't want to talk about, how they're on the verge of going into debt in public. So that's what I think it is. I seriously doubt it has anything to do with Antonio being, quote unquote, gay or anything like that. Would you agree with that interpretation or not?
Yeah, I agree with you that I don't know. There's no such reason to think that Antonio is gay. So maybe if he's gay, I think Shakespeare would portray it in a different way, not this way. So there's no way that he's gay.
Yeah, I think if he was actually gay, like they would make that Shakespeare would make that part of the story and like do like a love triangle or something, have like a real conflict going on there. That would be an aspect of the play itself, but it isn't. It's just a minor. Again, it's another minor detail kind of. So it's like I don't know. I think if it was meant to be significant, it would be much more significant than it is. That could be just my opinion, but still that's how I feel about it. I feel like he would have taken advantage of that to make a whole story, a whole thing of it, but he didn't because it wasn't. And yeah, I think their close bond is typical of Renaissance era male friendships. Their friendship isn't actually too far off from what most women have these days. I think our modern sensibilities just clash with the way things used to be in Shakespeare's time. When Portia and Nerissa kiss, for example, we don't really bat an eye because it's still done these days, generally speaking. Things like that happen. Women when women are like best, like a lot of best female friends, they tend to be very physical with each other. It's not like weird for two girls to sleep in the same bed. But it is kind of weird for two guys to sleep in the same bed, even if they're friends and it's just normal and they're both, and both parties are heterosexual or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's like it's still just kind of that social. We imbue that things like that with social meanings that don't necessarily say anything other than that we place our own weird perspective on things that have no meaning otherwise. No intrinsic meaning anyway. So yeah, I just think it's a modern lens. I think it's the modern lens kind of fogging up the actual meaning behind a lot of this stuff. The second, because the second Antonio and Bassanio kiss, I noticed it, and that's because it's no longer done. Generally speaking, it's probably more than generally speaking. I think it's very uncommon for two guy friends these days to just kiss for no reason, especially on the lips. It's just not a thing. Cultural and historical distance. That's really what it comes down to. A cultural and historical distance. It's like, and it's a European thing as well too. It's like the French kiss on the cheeks, and then whatever. It's just that whole thing as well. That's definitely part of it. These days, the only time I'd say straight guy friends would kiss is if they're like super drunk or something, and even then, it's only as like a show of affection and because they are intoxicated. It's not if they really are straight anyway. It's just got nothing to do with homosexuality. I think I understand why people might read homosexuality into their relationship, but it kind of frustrates me that those people aren't willing to remove themselves from the biases of a modern viewing and simply approach the work as it is. Do you know what I mean? And to consider the times in which it was written. It'd be like calling like Shakespeare, for example, a classist for focusing so much on the upper classes when the society he came from was structured the way it was, to be like that. And so he's appealing to the sensibilities of his time, but he has so much universal appeal and everything. It's like, he still has those universal themes and everything. And, he drives the points home with all this, egalitarianism and whatnot. It's ridiculous to say things like that. I think people should stop trying to place modern standards on things and people that are hundreds and hundreds of years old now. Understand them as they were, learn from that, and move on. Do you have anything to add to that, Simone?
I agree with the idea that we should remove this the context, the basis of the standards of the modern world into this era that happened 100 years ago. So that with regards to the context about Antonio and Basano. So I agree with you.
Did it stand out to you when the two of them kissed?
Not at all, because in the Richard II, I guess it's also happened there. So it's not an issue for me at all.
Well, not necessarily an issue, but it doesn't you don't go like, oh hey, they just did that or anything. It's just kind of normal. It's normal. It's casual. It's whatever.
If I'm basing on the modern standards, so I guess it's disturbing, or it should be my concern. So but it's given that it's over 100 years ago, so I guess it doesn't really bothers me. So I don't know. I'm prepared for that thing. So that's things like that might happen. So I don't know. I accepted that it wasn't an issue, or it shouldn't be a thing that we should talk about or something.
To focus on, yeah, because it's the context of the times, exactly. Now, this is just another funny question, but do you think it was fair at the very end for Portia and Nerissa to get mad at Antonio and Bassanio for giving the rings to the lawyer and the clerk when it was really just them in disguise the whole time anyway?
I think maybe that's part of the comedy, I guess. That the I don't know if they're acting, if they're really mad or just acting
Yeah, I thought
that
it was
way.
pretty funny. Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was a nice way to kind of tie it all up and be more lighthearted with it and everything. So that was the comedy aspect of the film and the play as well. But yeah, for sure. And you know what I just realized part of what maybe, again, what I said earlier about how, what a comedy was to Shakespeare could be completely different to what we today would consider a comedy. I think the reason why the tone has to be so grounded and dark or whatever is because, and not always lighthearted and just kind of frolicky and the flowers and all that shit, is because um, there is a lot of drama in this play, in just the original play. Like, there's a lot of conflict, there's a lot going on. A man's life is on the line, but that could be funny to people of the past because life was harder, and it was a subsistence society or whatever, and they had a much more tolerance for that maybe, and their idea of a comedy was that, because the standards were just different, so maybe that's why you came into it thinking one thing and then, it turned out to be another. Would you agree with that assessment, perhaps?
Yes, I really do agree with that.
Oh, it's kind of loud over there. I'll give that a minute to calm down, and then I'll ask you again. But I'll just talk about how I would rate it now, and I'm going to ask you about this too in a second. But now that we've discussed it a little further, I got to be honest. I still stand by what I say about the movie and the play. I would give it the movie a 9, the play a 10. Same as before. I stand by it all. I think they're fantastic. I think they're a great way to start. Like, if you're trying to get into Shakespeare and you're having a hard time or whatever, start with this. Just start with the 2004 movie adaptation of The Merchant of Venice, starring Al Pacino as the Shylock, and it's a great movie. It's shot on location in Italy and Luxembourg. It's great. It's a faithful adaptation. You don't need anything more than that. It's a perfect introduction. Very balanced tone. Not necessarily equal parts comedy and drama, but just a great story, And if you want like modern storytelling directly from the source, there's no better place to go than Shakespeare, William Shakespeare. So if you want to know what the master is all about and everything, if you want to get a taste of that, check this out. I would definitely recommend it. Merchant of Venice, 2004. It's free to watch on YouTube, and you might as well. Like, at least at the time of recording this, it's up there. But take advantage of it. Go on, enjoy it, have fun. It's a great time. Or buy it, buy it too. You do whatever. It's great. It's a really good, really faithful adaptation. A really solid literary adaptation, just in general. Really solid literary adaptation. Now, so yeah, what do you think? Do you think it was fair for the two of them to get mad at the two guys for giving away the rings, Simone?
Maybe it's just they're testing the loyalty of their lovers. I guess so. It has a point that they're mad. So maybe it's part of the comedy, I guess.
Yeah, but like, just whose side are you on? The guys or the girls in that case?
Uh, Maybe I'm neutral, I guess.
You're what? You're neutral? Okay, so yeah, we'll give them a little bit of time to work out those technical difficulties. Um, in terms of, I guess, just to wrap everything up, what I took away from the film. So, what did you take away from this movie? Is the question. I would say, again, going back to what I said about how no one is deserving of revenge enough to actually receive it without consequence. That to me is the thing that really drives this whole play home. The whole story home is, maybe that's a very Christian view to hold, but Shakespeare was a Christian and a very old school one at that. So what are you going to do? It's better that the work ends with a moral that people can disagree with. It makes for good conversation and stands as a testament to the complexity of the scenarios described within said work. The fact that there isn't one catch-all solution to things, because in life there are no catch-all, end-all, be-all, one single solution that's going to solve everything. It doesn't exist. No one ideology, no one religion, no one belief system. None of that is going to solve every single issue that you face in life. You got to be flexible. You got to think critically. You got to be rational. That's really, if there's one thing that's going to, save everything or whatever, it's going to be rationality, rational thinking, critical thinking, being able to change according to how each particular scenario is. It's like, maybe in one situation you got to be a bit more aggressive, and then maybe in the next you got to be a bit calmer and more diplomatic. You can never just be one thing. It can never be too rigid, and so really this play just stands as a, you know, it reminds you of that, reminds you to do that, to think critically, to be more rational, and that's what great art, that's what good works of art should do, you know. And so because of that, I think that this is a you know, the Merchant of Venice is a bona fide good work of art. um but yeah, let's try that again. Simone, do you think so? You know, with Portia and Narissa versus Antonio and Bassanio, would you agree with the guys or the girls in that case? Whose side are you on? If you have to take a side, this is just a fun question. You know, whose side would you take?
I take the side of the boys.
Okay.
I guess that they can defend themselves because knowing that the girls are they are the lawyer and the assistant of the lawyer, so they uh, they had a point on defending themselves.
But even if they weren't the lawyers, like, do you think it would have been like messed? Do you think it would have been messed up if they'd given the ring to the people who had like saved, you know, Antonio's life? Like, do you think that would have been like a bad thing?
Um, I think it's okay. I think they can manage to explain themselves to their wife to their wives. I guess that I don't know. They can do it. They can explain what really happened, and everything will be fine.
Yeah, yeah. And now, now that we've talked about it again, what would you rate it? Do you still stand by the ratings you gave it earlier, or have they changed? You know, talk me through that.
Maybe I just it's absurd that I rated basing that I just understand that it should be the modern world standard when it comes to comedy. So I think that you said that earlier that it's from the 100 years ago, so 100 of years ago. So maybe they have a different standard regarding things. So maybe they see it as comedic in this way. So I guess that I give it a rating. The whole movie, I guess I gave it a 10, and then the story, I'll give it also a. I give it a 9.5 earlier, so maybe I'll give it a 10. So maybe I don't know. I just realized things that I shouldn't base it on my. I need to disengage in the uh to the modern world standards that I've been exposed to. So maybe a different story or a different material needs a different approach each time. So I shouldn't base it on the things that we enjoy now or they have in the modern world.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think
Go ahead.
we should think it more critically or maybe articulate more regarding this before know the aspects that I didn't like about it or things that I don't understand and try to understand it so that I can give the way to understand what regarding this thing. So and it's a great experience.
Right. Exactly. 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 Um, and I'm glad that the conversation can help you, you know, come to understand that, I suppose. But yeah, ultimately, what would you say you took away from this movie and the play? What's the
Yeah,
big takeaway for you? What did you learn?
the,
Uh,
in the end of the day, we are all human. We are even though that there's classes in this society. I guess that we're human at all. I mean, the way that they are portrayed that it wasn't focused on their classes. I guess that, and there's a part of them that's they're still human. That they're in the end of the day, there we have the traits that we shared. I guess that I like the character um, of Shylock that it is his lines that and also the final lines of Portia when she acts like a lawyer. So I guess that we shouldn't delve into revenge. I guess that we should be open for change or what just what you say is egalitarianism. So uh, that's this is all about to live our lives in a better way. So should be open for a better things, not just dwell on. revenge at all.
Yeah. And do you have any closing remarks? Any other last, closing remarks? Anything else you want to say before I move on to the would you rather question and then end the episode? Is there anything else you want to say at all? Just get it out now. Go ahead. Feel free. This is your space. No, go ahead.
So maybe don't be at the next. I don't know if it just appeal to the audience, but maybe to give a better review, I guess I need to, or it's not just apply to me. It just applies to everybody that we should be open-minded regarding things, that we shouldn't stick on one idea or one belief. On one belief, we should to be able to improve as an individual. We should expose ourselves or engage to things that we don't understand. Do some research regarding it, what we to assess ourselves, what we really don't understand about it, to get to dive deeper, not just in the shallow parts that offended us or we didn't like. So maybe a never-ending cycle of questions. So you should question things. So if you don't understand, if you didn't understand that thing, you should question why you didn't understand it, and then the process of learning will arise from you. So I don't know. This whole series is a really great idea. Or I like this process.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's fun. It's productive. And yeah, we should all try to adopt a more holistic, rational approach to life. Every one of us. Like if there's any like one ideology, because it's not really an ideology, but if there's any one guiding principle we should all take to heart, it's to think for ourselves and to always question things and to work to improve our understandings of life and the world around us and other people and so on and so forth, et cetera, et cetera. If more people did that, we'd have a much better world. But there's a lot of ignorance and just bias and prejudice and short narrow-mindedness and narrow worldviews, and it's just kind of a mess because of that. But yeah, it's a bit disappointing, but it's like at least we can come on here and work to be better or whatever, and just whatever, it's just kind of how it is. It's about self-improvement and it's about self-determination. That's really what it comes down to. But yeah, so now leading into, we end every episode of the podcast with a would you rather. So I got a bit of an interesting one here. This one, I've read it and I still don't know what I would go with, but Simone, answer me this. Would you rather know the history of every object you touch or be able to talk to animals?
Maybe it's a tough question. I don't know what should I answer. Maybe I'll articulate. Give me a minute. I'll articulate my thoughts regarding this thing. I don't know. It's a tough question.
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. Would you rather know the history of every object you touched or be able to talk to animals? Honestly, this might sound a bit messed up or whatever, but it's like I have a feeling that most other animals just aren't as they're not on our level. They're not on our level of sentience or intelligence or whatever. Like a lot of them just kind of eat, reproduce, and then that's it. That's kind of all their lives. So I feel like if you talk to them, all they'd ever talk about is just eating and being at the top of the pack, and just reproducing eventually, finding a good mate and all that. It wouldn't be very interesting. Like you wouldn't get many more insights than you already have, I think, is kind of the issue with that. But then again, maybe you could teach them stuff. Like if you talk to them, maybe you could teach them how to be more sentient. But then that opens up a lot of issues too. That might mess up the hierarchy or whatever, or like the ecosystem and all that. Because like if you end up educating, like, I don't know, cows and stuff, then we won't have any more milk or meat or anything like that. The farming industry will like turn itself completely over. So it's like I feel like that's too radical a change to really that's too strong a power to really mess with. I feel like it would throw the balance off and really fuck things up, so I would rather go with knowing the history of every object I touch, because then we could open up the whole, we could understand history a bit better. All the knowledge that got destroyed in, when they burned the Library of Alexandria, for example, it's like you could go to the ruins of Alexandria and figure out everything that happened there, and then you'd know, and then you'd be able to piece together, who we were, and we'd be able to solve all these mysteries about history, like did the aliens really build the pyramids and all that shit, it's like we would actually know. We would have objective, like, proof for all of that solid evidence, and that just be much more productive, and productive in a way that isn't like detrimental to our history and our understanding of things and everything. It might be a little existentially worrying, I guess, with regards to some things, but I mean, it's better. It's eventually better to rip off the band-aid, and to know as opposed to never know at all. We could finally answer all these questions. Like I could figure, maybe through this you could eventually figure out, um, if Shakespeare really was, what some people think he was or whatever. You could solve all tons of different, things. You could finally put the answers to questions to these burning questions that we've been trying to ask for hundreds and hundreds of years, and it's just hundreds of thousands of, sometimes millions of years or whatever. So many possibilities with that. So I would go with that. And I think sorry, just beyond the societal benefit and all that, I think it'd just be cool to know for myself too. That's how you like. I'm all about learning and treating life as an epistemological quest. To know as much as possible before you die, before you kick it, to understand life as deeply as you can. This would definitely be a great tool to have for that. And I would just spend all day touching different things and figuring out what they, learning about their histories and everything. And also, it would help you understand people as well too. Like if you have a girlfriend, you hold her hands or something, or you kiss her, and then boom, like her entire life story, and then you appreciate her more, and you understand, and like that, it leads to all sorts of great things, and like you can have a lot more empathy for people too. Like if you're going down the street and you pat a homeless guy on the shoulder or something, you get to see his whole life, you get to find out like how he got to that point, and it'll teach you empathy, and it'll help you understand people better as well, because that's a really important thing too, is empathy, understanding between human beings, between individuals. So yeah, I just think all around being able to know the history of every object you touch, and I'm assuming that object includes everything, human beings too. Not that human beings are objects or anything, but or well, I guess people don't really mind that, but whatever, yeah, just I would include all of that in that definition of whatever. That's how I interpret the question, but that's what I would go with. Simone, is there anything you'd like to add to that? Have you come up with an answer yet?
Yeah, I come up with a. I gotta choose knowing the history of the every object that I touch, because I don't know if I can get any knowledge of if I'm gonna be able to talk to animal. I don't know. Just like you say, it will mess up the hierarchy. I guess that I don't know when we're able to talk to them. So maybe they will say that oh, you shouldn't eat us or something. So maybe that's a thing about it. I guess that so for example, in the childhood, we think about that when we can talk about to animals, we can appeal to them as if they're in the fables that we read. So I don't think that it would be that way, because it's just the product of pure human imagination. So maybe if I'm going to be put ourselves into the animals, so I guess that everything that will comes up to our mind, or the thing that they will talk about, is their everyday routines or how their mind works. So there's nothing much at it at all that we can get rather so I choose knowing the history of everything that we touch. I think that there are some, for example, the history itself is it's so very complicated that it's hard to understand things, because some evidences are no longer there at all, or there's an evidence but it's hard to figure out how these things goes, or we can connect it. So maybe when you touch things, so maybe it will give you a knowledge or something, or better understanding the things that people don't understand. So maybe you can be the key to understand everything that the conspiracies that lies in this world. So I'll go with that one.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I realized, it's like I just realized this, but it's like, yeah, I feel like people would believe you more if you explained the histories behind things, because that's something so complicated. It's like really hard to make up, and I feel like people like if you told every like the world or whatever that you knew how to talk to cows and stuff, and then like you interpreted what cows are saying to you, they wouldn't believe you, because people have hoaxed that all the time. People have made that shit up like for years and everything. So it doesn't seem as believable. I feel like people would just think you're nuts. But if you know the complex like history of something, it's a lot harder to make up, and I think people would take you a lot more seriously. And I also think just historians and scholars and all that they have an interest in that anyway, so they would be willing to hear they'd be more willing to hear you out and like do the research to try to find other ways of proving whatever that way, But anyway, that's pretty much all we got for this episode. We're going. So yeah. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to argue with us in the comments, feel free. Just be respectful. Cordial, civil discourse. That's all we ask. Subscribe to the channel for more content. We upload new videos every week. We're going to continue on with the Shakespeare marathon. That's our main priority right now with the Imperial Tides podcast. But we both also do have solo series. I know that I haven't uploaded like much for my own. I've only uploaded one, but I will try to get more solo reviews out very soon. So stay tuned for those. Look forward to that. Tea with Simone is Simone's solo series. He's been doing a lot more. He's been active on it. We've got a couple more videos for him up in the pipeline. I got to edit the scripts for them, and then we'll get them out to you as soon as possible. But not too soon, not so we don't want to bombard you with too much content. But yeah, Simone, is there anything you want to add? Are there any movies that you're looking forward to reviewing? Anything like that? Anything you want to get out to the people before we close out?
I don't know. I don't have much knowledge about this thing, so maybe I'll do more research during this process. For example, I'm looking forward for more Shakespeare review for the meantime.
Is there any particular Shakespeare that you want to watch next? Do you have a preference for what direction we go in from here?
Maybe another comedy, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. So, go ahead.
I think this is another perspective, so maybe I can have a different approach to things for the next episode. So I think I try to make it more better, I guess, by articulate my thoughts to give the audience the better perspective of things. So that's it.
Right, yeah. Do you think this episode went better than the Richard II episode?
I guess I don't know. I like every episode that we get because I learn from it. We learn from it, so we've been improving since the first episode. So especially me. So that's it.
That's good to hear. Yeah. So yeah, that's it, guys. We've been going for almost 2 hours now. This one's a really long one, but yeah, I had a lot of fun with this one. I had a lot of fun watching the movie. I had a lot of fun researching about the play, and I had a lot of fun doing this podcast episode here. So that's all. Have a nice rest of your day, guys, and see you in the next one. Peace.